Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us across the vast Louisiana plain, where we are advancing the cause of freedom and liberty and constitutional conservatism, elevating the cause of constitutional conservative candidates, slowly but surely draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Well, hello, State of Freedom warriors. We are so grateful for you. We're so honored that you would have us with you for part of your day. We're only here because of your encouragement, your friendship, your prayers, and your financial support. If you're looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. We'd love it if you'd help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. If you want to do that, just like the show on whatever platform you listen to it on, subscribe to it, share it. Don't forget we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, and the links to those are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge Parish Chapter is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend and take back their parental rights at all levels of government. To learn more or to get involved with Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge, email momsforlibertybatonrouge@gmail.com. That's moms, the number 4, libertybatonrouge@gmail.com. The email address is on the Patriot page of our website, freedomstate.us, and it's in the show notes. Joining us today is Representative Michael Echols from District 14, and he's representing the Monroe area. Before we bring him in, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Mark chapter 4, verses 3 through 9, and it says, "Consider this, a sower went out to sow. As he sowed, some fell along the beaten path, and soon the birds came and ate it. Some fell onto gravel with no topsoil and quickly sprouted since the soil had no depth. But when the days grew hot, the sprouts were scorched and withered because they had insufficient roots. Some fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no fruit. But some fell onto good, rich soil that kept producing a good harvest. Some yielded 30, some 60, and some 100-fold. If you understand this, then you need to respond." In this parable, Jesus is talking about the condition of the soil of our hearts. And the condition of our hearts determines whether the word of God is able to take root and grow and produce. And the beaten path in the parable represents a hard heart that the seed cannot even enter. The topsoil that he talks about represents a hollow heart that has no depth. And the thorny place is a heart that has the world around it competing for its affection and its resources. But the rich soil is the place where the word of God can grow and produce a tremendous return. So ask the Lord to reveal to you today the condition of your heart so you can understand how much of his word is able to grow and thrive in your own life. He's going to show you what it is that needs to change if you ask him. And if you feel like your heart needs healing and restoration, I just want to mention a book that's been an incredible resource for me. The book is called 3 Easy Steps to Emotional Healing. It gives emotional healing instructions that are simple, quick, and honestly pretty pain-free, pretty drama-free, and it works. I'm not a paid advertiser for this book. It's just been a really great help to me, and it's only $5 on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever you buy books. So I will put the link to that in the show notes because I feel like it may be a great resource for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of having a rich soil, and sometimes you have to judge the richness of the soil by the results that we achieve. By their fruits you shall know them. And I'll tell you that Representative Michael Echols, who's our guest this morning, Danielle, is the author of a bill that is so extraordinarily important, was brought last year and did not survive the veto override session in the Senate, despite a very passionate speech on the House floor by Representative Chuck Owen. It is Representative Echols' bill that will prohibit our foreign enemies from purchasing or acquiring agricultural property in Louisiana. And here to talk about that bill and one other bill that we'll get into is Representative Michael Echols himself. Rep. Echols, what a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for taking a few minutes, sir.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Tell us about House Bill 238. As I said a minute ago, you brought it last year, and here we are with it again. And it looks like this is on the verge of a governor's signature. Tell us about the bill and where it stands right now.
Sure. So House Bill 238 was a simple bill that would prevent foreign adversaries from owning agricultural land in the state of Louisiana. You've seen over the last number of years, China and other foreign adversaries continuing to buy up American assets. And, for me, I live in a large agricultural area, a large agricultural district, and this looked like a clear and present danger, especially when you start to dig into some of the things that you're seeing these foreign adversaries do once they gather these assets. Many of these assets they're gathering are near some of our military bases. So this is both a national threat and a threat to our potential food supply. So when I brought this bill a little over a year ago, of course, we pushed it through the process. It passed out of the House and the Senate with little to no opposition, and then the governor vetoed it. Well, we brought it back as one of the key bills to get an override on, and we did survive a House override, which was, pins and needles, because the governor at the time, John Bel Edwards, had a lot of power, and he certainly put the pressure on to keep that from happening. But we got it out of the House, and then we get to the Senate. Of course, the governor's presence there was far stronger than it was in the House, and he was able to beat us by a couple of votes. Now, I'm calling it an Echols repeat bill, so I brought the same exact bill this year. Of course, it's flown through the House. It's flown through the Senate with little to almost zero opposition. I think only a handful of votes in the House against it, and I don't even think they knew what they were voting on when they voted against it. And now it's at the governor's desk. This, to me, is a simple protection for our farmers, our way of life, and our food supply. Also, some protections in there around ag land ownership on or near military bases. So I think it's a good pro-America bill, and it keeps us safe and our food supply safe.
Representative Echols, you mentioned the military bases, which is especially concerning. What are some examples you've seen, maybe either in Louisiana besides the military base, land buy-up nearby the military bases, or in other states that makes this an issue worth fighting for? Have you seen some really sinister stuff taking place?
Absolutely. So I've worked with several national groups that have been in, high-level security clearance related issues. And we've seen across America that Chinese subsidiary organizations buying land near these military bases in a very targeted manner. I don't know if that's happened yet in Louisiana, but I would rather play good defense than have to go back on offense in the future. So we went ahead and added some provisions in here to ensure that those protections were in place for our state as well, because, between Shreveport and Fort Polk and other areas around the state, we have a number of military bases, and so we want to protect those bases at all costs.
Yeah. One of the criticisms, Representative Echols, of the bill that we heard, it was like a constant refrain last year, really, and this year to a significant degree, is that the bill is going to unfairly target Chinese Americans or immigrants from other countries who are our sworn enemies, but the citizens are not necessarily our sworn enemies, and that this is going to sweep them into a violation of their due process rights, and it's going to unfairly target and victimize them in our effort to make sure that our foreign governments don't acquire property in Louisiana. What's your response to that? And does the bill accommodate for that?
Yeah, that does nothing of the such. There have been other bills that did more clearly target individuals. This is more around targeting corporations and multinational organizations affiliated with Iran, Iraq, other terrorist-linked countries, but more specifically China. This is a pretty clear-cut bill, and I tried to keep it that way because, again, my target was food supply and military bases. There have been other bills, as I mentioned before, that target individuals from owning individual pieces of property to build a home, and that this bill had nothing to do with that.
Right, and based on my reading of the bill, it does not. But sometimes, the sometimes people do not allow the actual facts to get into the way of their argument. And so I just wanted to clarify that your bill does nothing of that kind.
Yeah, and if you watch the committee hearings too, I mean, we had no opposition there was one red card a year ago in Civil Law Committee, and it was because somebody didn't understand the bill. They thought it was another bill. So we've had little to no opposition in our committee hearings or on the floor. In fact, there's been very little debate because this is such a clear-cut, simple bill compared to other bills in the past.
But very important.
Absolutely.
And Rep. Echols, does this bill is it only forward-looking, or does it address land that these types of companies may have already purchased? Or are we able to take a look at those purchases now after this bill gets signed by the governor?
So it is forward-looking, but as we go forward, I think part of this is to put a spotlight on, what assets are currently out there and potentially owned. And then we can take on a case-by-case basis to identify those sites. And, if we want to go back in the future, I'm more than happy to do that. But I want to make sure that we play defense going forward.
Great.
Very much so. And certainly, in light of the obvious effort by our foreign enemies to disable our infrastructure generally, this restriction on their capacity to purchase agricultural property in the interior of our state is just a massively important bill. Do you expect, Representative Echols, the governor, to sign this imminently, or what's the status of his signing of the bill at this point?
So I believe it's been on his desk for about a week. I've gotten no indication that he won't sign the bill, but they haven't called me to say, okay, we're having a bill signing day or anything. So I'm hopeful that it just becomes law with his signature, but we'll see more over the next week or two.
Well, certainly I would be surprised if Governor Landry does not sign the bill, and I would imagine that there would be disappointment that resonates across the state if he doesn't. And we have every reason to believe that he will. So hopefully we'll be seeing a picture of you and Governor Landry very soon at a very august signing ceremony.
Well, to date, I've never sat with a governor to sign any of my bills. They've either become law without a formal signing ceremony. So maybe this will be my first. But one thing you know about me, if you've seen me in committee or as I bring bills, if the governor were to veto the bill, I would bring the exact same bill again next year and let the administration explain why they want to protect China.
Yes, indeed. And I have seen you, Representative Echols. You are definitely not lacking in relentlessness or doggedness, and very, very happy to have you in the legislature for that reason.
Yeah, thank you for your tenacity.
Some would say it's dumb commitment, but when I feel like something is right and fair, I try to stick to it. And if I win, that's fine. If I lose, that's fine. But I'm going to keep pushing forward.
Well, that's awesome. I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/DWalker. Get to shopping. That helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at Danielle@freedomstate.us for more information. Speaking of pushing forward and maybe switching gears a little bit, you brought some legislation this past session that addressed something that touched my life and touched many people's lives very closely. I feel like I was unfairly mandated to get the COVID-19 vaccine by my former employer. I fought that tooth and nail, and I was extremely proud and relieved to see that you brought some legislation that this year that would prevent that kind of thing from happening again. I know many people across the state share my experience and my perspective. Would you tell us about your House Bill 87 and what's the status of it now?
Yeah, so House Bill 87 came about because of 3 years of the largest overreach in the history of America by government. More specifically, the state of Louisiana, John Bell Edwards and his henchmen of an organization with overreach and pushing this COVID-19 vaccine and process down our throats, artificially shutting down businesses, killing tens of thousands of people, and not by the disease itself, but by shutting down doctors' offices, shutting down the healthcare system, killing tens of thousands of jobs by shutting down businesses artificially. This was an attempt to, at the very least, say that no entity, business or government, can mandate the COVID-19 vaccine, nor can mask mandates continue to be in place. You know, you still have over a dozen schools or government organizations still mandating this crap, especially in South Louisiana, and some even with these silly mask rules still. This bill would have prevented that going forward. I think, you know, it's better to put something like this on paper and make it a law because of that egregious overreach over the last 3 years. I have fought from 60 to 90 days after our first shutdown, when we kind of realized, okay, while this is a disease state that's floating through, created by China and their partners, it's something that we shouldn't be shutting down our businesses and we shouldn't be dismantling our healthcare system, because when you do that, you prevent care and you create all types of other havoc for individuals. We saw this. I fought it tooth and nail. After that, for the next several years, some days a fruitless battle. But this bill was just kind of the final stamp to say no more of this stupidity.
Yeah, Representative Echols, I want to tell you that, you know, as the head of the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, I have seen a lot of bills go through, and I've seen a lot of activity down at the legislature when it comes to pushing hard on things. And this bill, I'm extraordinarily proud of your efforts on it. I know that it started off in the House. Your original bill was extremely strong, and it allowed first of all, it prohibited the mandating of the shot or even an effort to mandate the shot by any employer. And it allowed a private right of action, a personal lawsuit against anyone who was damaged by it. And I thought that, and it was an exception, obviously, to the workers' compensation statute. I thought the bill was extraordinary. In fact, Representative Egan even wanted to make it retroactive to where if you had been injured in the past by the COVID shot, you could sue. But obviously, you wanted it prospective only. It was a very, very good bill. And obviously, when it got onto the House floor, you had to make some amendments so that you could get something that would still be effective passed. So at this point, it doesn't allow a personal right of action, a personal lawsuit, but it does allow some very significant administrative penalties, and it allows the Attorney General to take action in the event of a violation. Is that right?
Right. So when I brought the bill to the floor, now the bill flew out of committee, it came to the floor, and the business association groups were opposed to the bill. Now, I've got a perfect voting record or near perfect voting record with those business organizations, but this to me is a fabric item. We should not be mandated a vaccine like this that is experimental. It doesn't have decades of testing. And to me, it's just criminal. So it did have all these different legal remedies, but some of those were unlimited legal remedies. And look, I'm all about figuring out a way to get the process done when it comes to a bill. And after, we failed on the first House vote because of that business opposition. So I went back to the drawing board and said, okay, there's another way I can do this without unlimited liability. And look, my end game is not to hurt businesses. I want businesses to grow and thrive. They've been through enough over the years with all the heinous government overreach that we've had. So by doing a penalty-based system, it would confine any potential losses. And yes, looking prospectively, I think is fair for businesses too, because they had stuff jammed down their throat by the CDC, by the Fauci's of the world. And so at the end of the day, I just wanted to have a simplistic bill. It passed with 71 votes on the House floor. We sent it to the Senate. It went to Jude, where it ultimately died its death because Jude is not a very conservative committee. And so from that, I was able to convince some colleagues in another committee to take House Bill 87 and amend it into another bill by Kathy Edmondson. That bill, I believe, is House Bill 47. Kathy was excited about that bill. There's a question about germaneness and some other things. So I think the bill is still sitting with the senators, them trying to figure out a way to get it off the Senate floor. But I don't know if they're going to have to strip my bill off and keep Kathy's bill in its original form, because I don't want to damage Kathy's bill. She's got a really good bill with another set of things that she's working on trying to solve. But if they can figure out a way, I hope they keep it in there or at least amend it to where some of the premise of, you can't mandate the COVID vaccine and you can't mandate mask mandates.
Yeah. Well, you have certainly responded to great concern on the part of the public with this legislation. No question about that, because people are deeply concerned about it. And the way that you talked about the damage that was done by the way the response to this was mishandled was just right on point. Couldn't agree with you more. Another point that you made, Representative Echols, is that the business employers themselves were hit very hard. Very few, if any of them, had any desire to impose an experimental shot on their employees or on their customers for that matter, but they themselves were being pressured enormously by the CDC, by the FDA, by the government, by the LDH. And so they were sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place on the issue. So we will see. Our understanding at this point, Representative Echols, on the Senate side, is that the Senate president did rule, I believe, that it was not germane, because your bill deals with employers principally, and Representative Edmondson's bill deals with students and schools. But nonetheless, Senator Hodges made every effort to get that on there. And even if it doesn't go through this year, I have a feeling, knowing you and knowing how dogged you are, that it's coming back again, baby. And we can't wait to help you get it through.
Well, one of the things I do like in that building is you can be creative and move bills at every different point in the process. And I assure you with that one, I'll be very creative on how we get it across the finish line next year.
Yeah. Last question on this, Representative Echols. What about when you bring it next year? There are many people are concerned not just about the COVID shot, but just concerned about emergency use authorization or experimental vaccines generally. And they're saying, well, why should I ever be mandated by an employer to take an experimental vaccine, that's not FDA approved? So is there a chance that you could potentially, or would you consider broadening the bill next year to include any EUA vaccine?
Other people have brought similar bills, and I'm going to continue to support their efforts. When I pick up a project that I'm working on, I'm pretty laser focused on what I want to accomplishing. And so I'm going to stick to the thing that I think is the most egregious, and that is the COVID vaccine. I'll continue to support, Rep. Edmondson, Rep. Owens, and those that bring in broader bills. I'm not anti-vaccine. I support specific vaccines in the system. But as it relates to these broad use vaccines that don't have any data or history, I'm always going to be opposed to any mandates around those.
Yeah. And what I love about this bill is that it also provides good legal cover for those companies, the businesses that don't want to mandate the vaccine. It allows them to point to a law and say, look, I can't do this, otherwise I'm going to face penalties. So it just helps people who already want to do the right thing be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you are almost at the finish line of the session. What are you looking forward to the most, and how are you going to be spending some of your time outside of Baton Rouge?
When we get back from the Capitol, and of course I live in Monroe, I've got several businesses that I own. And so it'll be try to get back into my businesses and shore up anything that I've missed for the last 6 months. And it's literally been 6 months we've been in Baton Rouge. It's a lot of session time, which I enjoy doing the work, but it's also taxing on businesses and families. So I got to get back to that for a minute and then get back to my constituency and finding out what issues we got to work on for next year. So never ending cycle, but I'm honored to get to serve the District 14 constituents and try to make Louisiana a little bit better place.
Well, we are happy that you're there, Representative Echols. Always enjoy seeing you in committee. And I wanted to mention one other thing before you go. I just wanted to acknowledge your efforts, because of your foresight. I think 2 or 3 years ago, you brought a bill specifically to allow and to prohibit penalties upon doctors simply for prescribing off-label medication, basically for doing their job as long as the medication was FDA approved. I remember seeing that, and that was well before Representative Edmonston brought her bill. And you've always been as sort of on the cutting edge of individual freedom and liberty, and we are just so thankful to you for that reason. And you have the capacity to stand on your own, to keep moving forward for the citizens of Louisiana. And we just wanted to tell you that, and tell you again what a privilege it is to have you on the show with us. We'll be following you, and we look forward to visiting again soon.
Sounds great. I appreciate y'all's time.
God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.